Love him or hate him, President Donald J. Trump's historic presidency, spanning 2 non-consecutive terms, represents the most extraordinary political comeback in American history. Indeed, his transformation from real estate mogul to commander-in-chief seemed to embody pure American ambition and business acumen. Yet, little do you know that the Don's meteoric rise was secretly orchestrated by his father, Fred, a Brooklyn real estate genius who made Donald a millionaire before he could tie his shoes. And Fred's crown jewel involved shell companies that transformed business expenses into tax-free family gifts worth millions. Thus, in today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we reveal the phantom fortune that secretly funded a presidency as we describe the original Trump. Meet Fred Trump's $400 million secret empire. While the world obsessed over Donald Trump's golden escalators and gilded towers, the real mastermind behind the Trump fortune operated with the stealth of a cat burglar in broad daylight, transferring $430 million to his son while the taxman dozed off at his desk. Frederick Christ Trump Senior built an empire so cunningly concealed that it makes the Wizard of Oz look like an amateur magician, constructing over 27,000 apartments across Brooklyn and Queens while maintaining the public persona of a thrifty contractor who picked up stray nails from construction sites. The sheer audacity of Fred's financial sleight of hand would make a Vegas con artist weep with envy. He and his wife Mary funneled over $1 billion to their children while paying a measly $52.2 million in taxes instead of the $550 million they legitimately owed. Fred orchestrated a symphony of sophisticated schemes through shell companies with names as bland as elevator music, including the deliciously named All-County Building Supply and Maintenance, which existed solely to disguise gifts as business expenses. The crown jewel of Fred's deception involved grantor-retained annuity trusts, a financial instrument so arcane it sounds like something from a Harry Potter novel, which allowed him to value properties at $41.4 million for tax purposes when they were actually worth nearly $900 million. Picture this: a man who mixed his own floor cleaner and reused bent nails, transferring wealth equivalent to the GDP of a small European nation, all while living in the same modest Queens house from 1951 until his death. By age 3, Donald was already earning the modern equivalent of $200,000 annually from Daddy's empire, becoming a millionaire before he could properly tie his shoes, a detail that renders his self-made billionaire narrative about as credible as a $3 bill. The all-county scam alone generated markups of 20 to 50% on routine building supplies, effectively printing money through padded invoices that transformed legitimate business expenses into tax-free family gifts worth millions annually. Fred's frugality reached legendary proportions. He collected sawdust from construction sites, manufactured his own disinfectant, and operated from a 90-square-foot office while secretly controlling an empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The man who would teach Donald everything about wealth accumulation, media manipulation, and political maneuvering operated under aliases like Mr. Green, conducting deals with the paranoia of a Cold War spy and the efficiency of a Swiss banker. When Donald inherited his father's empire in 2004, the properties sold for $737.9 million, nearly 18 times their declared tax value, proving that Fred's greatest construction project wasn't any building, but rather the elaborate financial architecture that would eventually place a Trump in the White House. Frederick Christ Trump entered the world on October 11, 1905, in the Bronx, the son of German immigrants who had crossed the Atlantic carrying little more than determination and a willingness to reinvent themselves in America's concrete wilderness. His father's death, when Fred was barely a teenager, thrust him into partnership with his mother Elizabeth, establishing Elizabeth Trump and Son Company, when most boys his age were still playing stickball in the streets of New York's outer boroughs. At 15, Fred demonstrated the entrepreneurial instincts that would define his empire, entering real estate construction with the methodical precision of a skilled craftsman and the calculating mind of a chess strategist, plotting moves decades in advance. The early Trump operation focused on building garage extensions as automobile ownership exploded across America, a seemingly modest enterprise that taught Fred the fundamental lesson that would guide his entire career: identify what people need before they know they need it. During the 1920s and 30s, Fred concentrated his efforts on constructing affordable single-family houses throughout Brooklyn and Queens, establishing geographical boundaries that would contain and define his empire for the next 7 decades. His marketing innovations bordered on genius, releasing balloons at Coney Island containing coupons worth $50 off the $4,990 purchase price of Trump homes, creating a carnival atmosphere around real estate that prefigured his son's later theatrical approach to business. The young developer's attention to operational details became legendary among contractors and competitors alike. He personally supervised work crews, insisted on quality materials, and maintained cost controls that would make modern efficiency experts weep with admiration. Fred's business philosophy during these formative years emphasized the unglamorous virtues that built fortunes, saving unused nails from construction sites, mixing his own floor cleaning solutions, and handling property maintenance tasks that other developers delegated to hired help. The Great Depression, which destroyed countless real estate fortunes, became Fred's finishing school in survival economics as he pivoted to constructing supermarkets, demonstrating the adaptability that would characterize his approach to changing market conditions throughout his career. His perfectionist construction standards earned recognition from local newspapers, with one Brooklyn publication dubbing him the Henry Ford of the home building industry for his assembly line approach to affordable housing development. Fred's strategic approach to public relations included claiming Swedish ancestry rather than his actual German heritage, demonstrating his intuitive understanding that success in America sometimes required careful management of ethnic associations during periods of anti-German sentiment. By the late 1930s, the foundation was firmly established. Conservative financial practices, strategic location selection, quality construction standards, and an emerging understanding of how political connections could transform modest profits into extraordinary returns. The modest contractor who had started by building garage extensions was about to discover that the real money in real estate lay not in private markets, but in the vast, largely unguarded treasury of government housing programs. A revelation that would transform both his fortune and his methods. The end of World War II unleashed a tsunami of federal housing money that would reshape American cities, and Fred Trump positioned himself at the epicenter of this financial flood with the precision of a top surfer riding the perfect wave. Veterans returning from Europe and the Pacific needed housing, and government programs offered developers unprecedented opportunities to build large-scale projects with guaranteed financing, subsidized land costs, and built-in profit margins that made private development look like penny ante poker. Fred's first major coup came with Beach Haven, a 2,700-unit apartment complex that demonstrated his evolving understanding of how to extract maximum value from government partnership while maintaining the appearance of public service. The scale of his post-war projects dwarfed his earlier single-family home constructions. Trump Village on Coney Island eventually housed 3,800 families in a development that required relocating nearly 1,000 existing residents, many of them African-American families who found themselves excluded from the new housing. His political contributions flowed strategically across party lines, including $2,500 to Mayor Robert Wagner's 1961 campaign, a sum equivalent to over $22,000 today, ensuring access to decision-makers, regardless of which party controlled City Hall. The sophistication of Fred's government relations operation rivaled that of major corporations, with carefully timed donations, strategic philanthropy, and personal relationships that opened doors throughout New York's labyrinthine municipal bureaucracy. Beach Haven and Trump Village served as laboratories where Fred perfected the art of leveraging government resources, extracting profits from public programs, and navigating the complex regulations that governed subsidized construction. His appearance on the inaugural Forbes 400 list in 1982, with an estimated $200 million fortune shared with son Donald, marked his emergence from the ranks of local developers to nationally recognized real estate royalty. Fred's developments often required controversial land acquisitions that displaced existing communities, a process he managed through a combination of legal maneuvering, political connections, and an apparent indifference to the social costs of his profit-driven expansion. The transformation of Coney Island through Trump Village exemplified his approach, acquiring prime waterfront property through state cooperation, building dense housing that maximized rental income, and creating new residential communities that served his financial interests while fulfilling government housing goals. His business model during this golden era combined legitimate construction expertise with an increasingly sophisticated understanding of how to manipulate government programs, regulations, and subsidies to generate extraordinary returns on relatively modest investments. The crown jewel of Fred's empire was his command of what insiders called the system, the interconnected web of regulations, subsidies, tax breaks, and political relationships that determined which developers succeeded and which failed in New York's government-sponsored housing market. By the 1970s, Fred controlled an empire of apartment buildings that housed tens of thousands of families across Brooklyn and Queens, generating rental income streams that provided both immediate profits and long-term wealth accumulation for his growing family. The facade of respectability that Fred Trump had carefully constructed began cracking in 1973 when the United States Department of Justice filed a federal lawsuit accusing him and Donald of systematically refusing to rent apartments to black families across their Brooklyn and Queens empire. The discrimination case revealed a sophisticated system of racial exclusion that included coded markings on rental applications, C for colored, and instructions to building staff to discourage minority applicants through a variety of bureaucratic obstacles and outright refusals. Folk legend Woody Guthrie, who lived in one of Fred's Brooklyn buildings during the 1950s, captured the landlord's reputation in scathing lyrics that blamed Old Man Trump for stirring up racial hatred and enforcing segregation in his housing developments. The 1966 state investigation that exposed Fred's creative billing practices, charging $21,000 to rent a dump truck worth $3,600, provided a glimpse into financial manipulations that went far beyond simple overcharging into the realm of systematic fraud. Fred's use of the alias Mr. Green during property negotiations revealed a level of paranoia and deception that suggested he understood the questionable nature of many his business practices, conducting deals with the secrecy of a spy and the calculation of a career criminal. The shadowy details of Fred's early life included his arrest at a 1927 Ku Klux Klan parade in Queens, an incident that would haunt the family for decades, despite claims that he was merely an innocent bystander caught in police sweeps of the crowd. The systematic displacement of families to make way for Trump Village demonstrated Fred's willingness to destroy existing communities for profit, relocating nearly 1,000 families, predominantly minorities, who were then excluded from the new development through discriminatory rental practices. During the 1970s, tenant strikes at Fred's complexes highlighted deteriorating conditions that included infestations, inadequate maintenance, and building code violations that resulted in his arrest for failing to correct safety hazards at properties in Maryland. Fred's grooming of Donald for the family business began in earnest during the late 1960s, when the young man joined the company and began learning the sophisticated methods of political manipulation, media management, and financial engineering that would define the Trump approach to business. Fred personally drove Donald through their properties, teaching him tenant relations, maintenance protocols, supply negotiations, and the psychological techniques necessary to dominate business negotiations and political relationships. Donald's elevation to company president in 1971, while Fred assumed the chairman role, marked the beginning of the empire's expansion into Manhattan real estate, a geographic shift that would ultimately transform a regional outer borough operation into a globally recognized brand. The partnership between father and son during this transition period involved intensive training in the darker arts of real estate development, how to manipulate media coverage, exploit legal loopholes, and maintain the appearance of legitimacy while pushing ethical boundaries to their breaking point. Fred's questionable business practices extended to his family relationships, with biographer Harry Hurt reporting allegations that he was known as the King of Miami Beach for his extramarital affairs, and his reportedly saying he wished Donald's plane would crash during his son's messy divorce proceedings. The 2018 New York Times investigation that unraveled Fred Trump's financial empire revealed a wealth transfer operation so sophisticated it resembled a Swiss banking operation more than a family real estate business, moving over $1 billion to his children while reducing a $550 million tax obligation to a mere $52.2 million payment. The crown jewel of Fred's tax avoidance architecture was All County Building Supply and Maintenance, incorporated in 1992 as a supposedly independent company that existed solely to purchase supplies for Trump properties at normal prices, then resell them to Fred's buildings with markups of 20 to 50%. These inflated invoices generated the equivalent of $2.2 million annually per child by 1998 in today's currency, effectively transforming what should have been taxable gifts into legitimate business expenses that escaped the 55% gift tax rate. Grantor-retained annuity trusts represented Fred's crowning achievement of financial engineering, complex legal instruments that allowed him to transfer property ownership to his children in 1995, while valuing the assets at $41.4 million for tax purposes. When these same properties sold in 2004 for $737.9 million, the 16-fold discrepancy revealed the breathtaking scale of asset undervaluation that had enabled the family to dodge hundreds of millions in gift and estate taxes. Donald's financial support from his father began in toddlerhood and continued throughout his life. Earning $200,000 annually in today's currency by age 3, becoming a millionaire by age 8, and receiving part ownership of a 52-unit building by age 17. The Times investigation identified 295 separate revenue streams that Fred created for Donald, generating over $5 million annually during Donald's 40s and 50s in contemporary dollars, while providing total lifetime transfers of at least $413 million. The 2004 sale of Fred's remaining properties following his death in 1999 netted Donald $177.3 million, equivalent to $236.2 million in today's currency, providing the cash foundation for a $400 million spending spree on golf courses, wineries, and luxury properties. This financial windfall enabled Donald to abandon his previous king of debt strategy and begin purchasing properties with cash, including a $12.6 million land acquisition in Scotland for a golf course in 2006 and a $67.8 million purchase of Turnberry Golf Course in 2014. Tax experts who analyzed Fred's schemes described patterns of deception and potential fraud that exceeded typical aggressive tax planning, with property valuations discounted by 45% for minority ownership interests, when the Internal Revenue Service typically allows only 20 to 30% today. Despite the revelations of the Times investigation, no major legal actions stemming from Fred's wealth transfer schemes have been reported as of May 2025, suggesting either acceptance of technically legal, if ethically questionable, strategies or the practical difficulties of prosecuting decades-old financial maneuvers. Donald's current net worth of $5.5 billion, according to Forbes, represents growth far beyond his inheritance, indicating that while Fred's wealth provided crucial foundation capital, Donald's business ventures and media empire have multiplied the original family fortune several times over. The ultimate irony of Fred Trump's secret empire lies in its revelation. A man who operated in shadows and used aliases to conduct business inadvertently created the financial foundation for his son's rise to the most public position in American life. The tale of Fred Trump's phantom fortune demonstrates that America's wealthiest families often operate like financial magicians, making billions appear and disappear at will while leaving average taxpayers to wonder how the trick was performed. From the C for colored notations on rental applications to the shell companies that transformed business expenses into tax-free gifts, Fred built an empire on practices that pushed ethical and legal boundaries while maintaining a public image of modest success. His most remarkable achievement wasn't constructing thousands of apartments, but rather creating the financial foundation that enabled his son to purchase golf courses and luxury properties with cash, while maintaining the carefully crafted myth of the self-made billionaire. The Trump family story ultimately reveals that behind many great American fortunes lies not just hard work and ingenuity, but often elaborate schemes designed to shield wealth from both public scrutiny and government taxation. With that said, we'd love to see you in the comments. Do you think the strategies Fred Trump used to transfer wealth to his children should be legal, or should tax laws be reformed to close these loopholes? Thank you for watching another episode of Old Money Luxury. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers!